I know what you're all here for. Don't worry, I kinda like the show too. Welcome to the Impact Factor. The Impact Factor is what happens when two scientists and two best friends get together to talk about video games. My name is Alex Samocha, and I'm joined this week, as I am every single freaking week here on the Impact Factor, by the guy who also went around licking and spitting on display donuts with his backup dancer boyfriend, but unfortunately has not been caught on tape yet. My co-host, Charles Fliss.
Yeah, man, well, I had to do something to celebrate the fact that we have now reached 10 episodes! What? Double digits on the Impact Factor. 10!
That's 10 weeks, 10 hours, well, probably like 15 hours.
Yeah, man, exactly. We've done it. We've made it to 10 episodes. This is awesome. This means we've officially been going for more than 2 months. Very exciting stuff to see the Impact Factor continuing to grow, and hopefully everyone else out there is excited with us.
Yeah, we even have potentially a little inside baseball tricks here. Maybe something working to expand the podcast in some ways. No promises.
Yeah, man, but really good stuff coming up. No promises.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
No promises.
Please be excited.
I'm never going to get tired of that.
No, it's nothing better than please be excited. But yeah, we're 10 episodes in. Hopefully we're 10 times better than the first episode. I think we probably are. Though I don't know if we're 2 times as good as episode 5. Maybe we are. I don't know. we've been bouncing around all over the place.
You're doing way too much math for me right now.
Come on, man. It's 7:50 in the morning, doing some math. That's what I'm about. But don't pretend like you didn't spit in like all these donuts. I know you and Ariana Grande just can't get enough of contaminating donuts. Throw the book at her. Throw the book at you.
I saw that video and I was just like, she's stealing my game. What's she doing? That's my jam. I'm the original donut licker.
Yeah, the original donut. You heard it here first. The original donut licker. That sounds like a show title if I've heard anything.
That sounds like that needs to be my new handle on Steam. The original donut licker.
Oh, right. Oh, man. I mean, that would be my most impactful story if I could link it in any way to video games, but...
Well, it's only a matter of time before someone makes an app game where you're, like, trying to lick the most donuts. If somebody hasn't made that, we need to make that.
God, I don't know. Why don't we just share this on air?
That's money in the bank.
Our idea. We got to change her name slightly to, like, Adriana Large is Donut Liquor Sim or something like that.
Tap to lick. Tap to lick.
Tap to lick. Tap to lick. Tap to lick. Oh, we be a mobile phenomenon. We just have to have like a jam and finish that in this next like 24 hours and get that out there while it's still hot on the griddle.
Okay, so you call in sick to work. I'm gonna call in sick to work.
All right.
We're gonna finish this podcast and start donut licking.
All right, we got a plan. Okay. Do we know how to code?
I mean, I don't. Do you?
No, I don't either.
So we're gonna learn how to code.
Okay, learn how to code. Oh man, 10 episodes in, we're talking about making stupid mobile games. You know, you're in for a great episode of the Impact Factor.
Is there any other kind?
I don't. Hopefully not. We haven't had any feedback to tell us otherwise, so I'd say we're 10 for 10 at this point.
Those are good numbers. We are batting 1,000.
Or, as you'd like to say, 10 out of 10. Well, video game review score scale.
You're going to have to work on your tractor pull voice.
Okay. In a world where the Impact Factor is a podcast.
In a place where we give every video game 10 out of 10.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So. Yeah, it's too early for my movie my movie announcer voice.
You gotta let your voice settle after your morning exercises, princess.
In a world. I can't do it. Anyway, the Impact Factor is where I bring the Impact Factor is where I might bring my perspectives as a biomedical scientist and combine them with, and usually against, Fliss's social scientist worldview to have great discussions about video games. Donut licking aside, we've got a lot of cool stories to get into, so let's get it started right away with some news and views.
News and Views.
In an academic journal, News and Views collects the best of recent events and findings. Here, Fliss and I scour through the week in video game news to find the stories with the biggest impact to share with you all. Fliss, got a lot of juicy little tidbits here. Little glistening glazed donuts here for which to lick. What do you think was the most impactful story from this week in news?
Well, I'm afraid that the donut that I'm picking up to lick is one that tastes like disappointment and sadness.
Salty tears?
Yes. It tastes like salty tears. It tastes like salty fighting game fan tears. Why? Because MadCatz, the big maker, producer of fighting game sticks, arcade sticks, Actually, we call them arcade sticks in the fighting game community because the fight stick is a branded MadCatz accessory, as well as the producers of all those crazy guitars for Rock Band 4 have just announced that they are in serious financial trouble. And in a report to their stockholders, they've said that they need Rock Band 4 to be a success. And if Rock Band 4 is not a success, we could be looking at the end of this company.
No, not my MadCatz sticks. No.
No, with your Samo parts.
Oh my god. That's the thing. I was following this story. We'll get more into the details in a second here. But I was following this story, looking through like forums like, NeoGAF and Reddit and everything else. And there's such little sympathy for MadCatz because all people can remember are those really janky, busted, like it would always be like your third or fourth controller when you're playing on like the N64 or on the PlayStation or whatever else. Because like to be fair, their controllers for consoles are not great. They always had they had to change the button sizes. They tried to do really funky stuff, and the form factor was much different. And so everyone's like, well, good riddance. They make cruddy controllers and stuff. But the thing is, they're arcade sticks, they're fight sticks. What everyone calls them is this MadCatz specific branding.
And they make the best stuff. They make the best stuff.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. Everyone, I mean, you'll have people. You'll have, I guess, a few detractors who say otherwise, but I think it's pretty well agreed upon in the fighting game community. If you wanted to just, make sure that you're going out and getting a good fight stick that's gonna last you, years, that's gonna give you solid response, give you good input time, you don't do anything else and get MadCatz Tournament Edition fight stick, TE.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be an episode of the Impact Factor these days if we didn't talk about esports. And MadCatz definitely sponsors esports. I mean, Daigo Mihara is sponsored by MadCatz. It says that on the box.
They got a whole team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a whole team.
I mean, they're a big deal in fighting games, and they make such good quality stuff. And I mean, I don't mean to say this as an advertisement. Like, I own a MadCatz stick. I owned a Hori stick before that, and I destroyed that thing. And now I'm using my MadCatz stick, and I like it a lot. There are other good brands out there. Do your research if you're buying a fight stick, but the loss of the competition, the loss of MadCatz would be a huge blow to the fighting game scene.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, with the amount of financial trouble they're in, this is something that's been built up for a while. Because at first, my first initial reaction was like, oh, I guess nobody's buying new sticks for the new consoles because there aren't really fighting games that are out that have been demanding sticks to be used with them, right? Because I think the biggest fighting game release so far on these next gen of consoles has been Mortal Kombat X. And so many Mortal Kombat players started, with the, Super Nintendo release or whatever. And so many people play it on a pad or what, you would refer to as a controller. People refer to it as a pad. And less so on sticks. I think some of that's changing as Mortal Kombat becomes an increasingly competitive game. But you need something like the likes of a Street Fighter or a King of Fighters or a big anime fighter to get people to, purchase sticks. And I mean, maybe it also talks about the state of fighting games in the current market, too. I mean, fighting games don't do that great, which is something I know you and I are sad about.
Well, fighting games have such a high barrier to entry, and we're jumping off here a little bit, but that's a problem that the fighting game community has to tackle, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we get closer and closer to EVO, but there's this kind of insular feeling, right, that if you're going to invest in a fight stick, you better be willing to get good at fighting games. And I think for me, when I got my first fight stick, which was, full disclosure, fairly recently, right? It was within the last 3 years since I came to Japan.
Yeah.
And it was largely because one of my friends just sat down and was like, you like fighting games? He was like, yeah, I like fighting games. And he was like, look, just spend some money and buy a stick and never go back to using pad again. Because that's the difference. That's what's going to make a difference in your gameplay when you make the commitment to do that. And I think that we've got a real problem in fighting games where people aren't handing their sticks to other people to say, here, try this, see how this can be better, see why this is part of the tradition. And pads, they're not as good. They're not as good as sticks. If you like fighting games, you got to play on a fighting stick. And
I think for me at least, one of the main reasons I could never really get into competitive Ultra Street Fighter 4, one thing that these sticks really afford you is that Street Fighter is a 6-button fighter. And so that's, light, medium, heavy kick and light, medium, heavy punch. And on your controller, your standard controller, you really only have 4 face buttons to work
Mash
with.
R2.
And so 2 of your...
Mash R2.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, you have to end up putting buttons on the shoulder buttons, and it just feels unnatural to, like, move in between the face and the shoulders, and it makes it really hard to pull off more, of the tough techniques. But yeah, anyway, to end this digression, so that's sad. I have a MadCatz Fight Stick too, I guess, as a point of disclosure. I really enjoy it. I'd like to see them continue as a company. They're one of the only, like, big manufacturers, or, like, they're certainly one of the biggest manufacturers of fight sticks, as well as a lot of different gaming accessories. But, Fliss, you stated they're in big financial trouble. Let's just, like, kind of detail it a little bit further. So, they essentially were bankrupt. Their line of credit with the bank ran out. And it's only through this very skillful financials navigation, citing that, essentially convincing the bank that Rock Band 4 would be huge for them, they get a return on investment, that the bank extended them another line of credit. So without that, MadCatz could already be, going under. And so it sucks to see that so much of MadCat's success relies on Rock Band 4, because I'm not sure how many people are clamoring to buy a new Rock Band and to buy new Rock Band accessories.
Yeah, we both listened to a bunch of video game podcasts in addition to making ours here at the Impact Factor, and there's enthusiasm for Rock Band 4 out there. It seems like there's some excitement for it. I'm having a hard time with that because I just have no interest in it, personally. And,
yeah,
even if it is a mild success, is that going to be enough to save MadCatz? It sounds like they need a monster hit.
Yeah, and even if it's a success, like, it's still not clear if old peripherals will work, because I'm sure some people sold their peripherals, whatever, because those things take up an ungodly amount of space. But if they work, a lot of people aren't even going to buy new stuff because their things work. But even still, I just don't know the demand for rhythm games at this point anymore. I guess I'm glad they're coming back, but I felt like I had my time and place with Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and I've moved beyond that. And so, I think the thing is, this is going to live or die by a different generation of gamers than you and I. And that makes me a little scared because I don't know how they think.
Yeah, man, it's tough to trust generations of gamers that we don't really know yet. And
Millennials.
I don't even know where to start with that.
Hashtag millennial gamers.
You hear that dead air?
Share it on Instagram.
You hear that dead air? That's how I feel about that.
I'm gonna make a Vine about it.
I just don't understand these kids and their vines. That vines are what you pick tomatoes off of. Whippersnappers.
Okay, yeah, right. You picking a vine. You and your tomato garden.
I totally have a tomato garden.
Yeah, I believe it.
I grow other things in that garden too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like carrots. What were you thinking about?
I don't even know. Got maybe a squash or two.
Yeah, well, back to video games. I have quite literally moved on from Rock Band because I'm playing Rocksmith, right, which is where you're using an actual guitar, and I'm not trying to select any hierarchy between those games because Rock Band, right, it's just pure entertainment. It's a lot of fun to jam out with your friends too, whereas Rocksmith is designed to be a somewhat more serious teaching tool. And I agree with you. I agree with you that Rock Band, there was a time and place. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it my freshman year of college, which was now a really long time ago. And one thing that they're doing that gives me a little hope is that they're saying, okay, well, this is the definitive Rock Band. We're just going to keep supporting this through the life of the PS4. We're not going to have a million different Rock Bands like we had on PS3.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep releasing DLC. We're going to keep supporting this game. And that's a model that's really, really worked with Rocksmith. And so I'm hopeful that could take off for Rock Band.
Yeah, Rock Band as a service rather than a game. And I think more and more games are actually going to move towards that model because it just makes sense. No one wants to buy the same game over and over, but if you can keep buying more content, you can milk the so-called whales and make a lot of money. Learning lessons from the free-to-play market. I love it.
Right, well, Alex, can you give us something that you think, maybe some more cheerful news or something more interesting? What's up?
Let's go to where the good discussion news. So my most impactful story is, this is a rumor, gotta take it with a couple grains of salt here, salt that we're putting on your carrots from your garden, that NX production will begin in October. So for any of those, this is Nintendo news, and I'm sorry, we always gotta talk Nintendo. I swear this will be a little bit more positive than normal.
Yeah.
The Wii U, yeah, woohoo! The Wii U is dead in the water. If you read my excellent pieces on the blog, The Impact Factor, I wrote about how Nintendo's showing at E3 their central messaging. Looking at the evidence I had presented in front of me, their central messaging was, please be excited for the NX. But we're not going to talk about the NX. The NX isn't. We're not going to talk about it until 2016. So here's some games that are going to come. Just take these couple games that are coming out. Go, just forget we even mentioned the NX. So there was a rumor coming out of Foxconn, the Chinese manufacturer that makes pretty much every single piece of tech, that there was a kind of a work order, whatever, production shift that they're making. I forget the official term. I think it's like a first model, not necessarily prototype, but a first run of NX in October. And so people who are much more ensconced in the manufacturing world than me say that would suggest a release as early as summer of next year with a production schedule like that.
But, Alex, even if they were going to release in summer of next year, we're still going to see massive artificial shortages. I mean, this is Nintendo we're talking about.
This is Nintendo. We know Foxconn can make a lot of stuff. I mean, they make like 10 gajillion iPhones each generation to meet like the always the rapid demand. But yeah, so there's not going to be much. So yeah, this first run of NXs, allegedly, it's been leaked, going to start production in October, which could mean that the NX is a lot sooner than we think. Nintendo could be just, as I predicted from what they showed at E3, just be like, the Wii U is dead. There's no price cut because anybody who's still going to buy this hardware is going to buy it full price. We're moving on. So, first things first. Fliss, are you excited for the Nintendo NX? Codename Nintendo NX.
No. Not even a little bit. I have a 0 in my excitement, unless it's backwards compatible.
Okay. How backwards compatible?
Wii U.
Just Wii U backwards compatibility?
Just Wii U backwards compatibility.
I think they're good odds. I think they're good odds they'll be Wii U backwards compatible since only 5 million people in the world own a Wii U.
See, I know that backwards compatibility is not a thing that a lot of gamers really clamor for right now. It's not like a popular thing to want on your system, but the Wii U, from its branding as the Wii U instead of something different than a Wii, it was like the second version of the Wii, right? They might as well have called it the Wii 2. It might have been more successful that way.
Could have been. A little bit less confusing.
The Wii U, I never had any interest in getting it. And the only things that motivated me to even consider buying one were all the games that have come out really in the last year or have been announced now, right? I want to play Mario Kart. I want to play Yoshi's Woolly World. I want to play Mario Maker. As much as I complain about it, I want to play it. And if you can give me an NX and say, day one, you can buy all the Wii U games that you didn't buy because you didn't own a Wii U. You can play them, and then you can look forward to everything else we're going to have on the NX. Then I'll be more interested. If you can give me the Wii U library on it already, that's starting with games, and that's a good start for a new console.
That's true. I would like it if we're backwards compatible with all the way through the Wii, because I never owned a Wii, and there are a lot of games like Super Mario Galaxy 2 that I really want to play, as so many people think it's one of the best platformers of all time, but I've never gotten to. Alright, so to step back here, the NX, if this rumor is true, and the production is starting in October, I have this prediction here, a speculation timeline. So Nintendo, one of the things they've done with their Nintendo Direct system is really unallied themselves, disentangled themselves from having to reveal news at these big press and media and industry events. So, through the Nintendo Directs, they can announce so many games in the console release. So I think with this schedule, if this is true, I think that Nintendo is going to have an early/mid quarter one, early quarter two reveal of the Nintendo NX next year and Nintendo Direct. I think they're going to come to E3 in a big way and spotlight the NX there, and then it's going to be out fall/winter of that same year. I think we could see it probably fall next year. If this production schedule is true, I mean, they need to do something. If they're not getting out of the hardware game, period, the new 3DS I'm sure is selling, but not great. They're getting a lot of money from Amiibos, but that's, not games and not consoles. No one's buying the Wii U. No one has ever bought the Wii U, but certainly no one's buying it now. They need to get this new console out fast, and they said they're not even going to talk about it in 2016. So I might be excited if they, March 2016 say, hey, the NX is a thing. Here are the specs. At E3 say, here's the NX. People can play with it. Here are our launch games. And then the fall, here, you can pick up your NX. I think that could generate, assuming the NX is a compelling console, could really generate a lot of excitement and potentially even get people like me to jump on board.
Oh, that's a very exciting timeline. So then here's my question. What is it going to take in terms of the way the NX looks to make you excited about it? Because, you've said this before. I agree with you. Nintendo is always looking to push the envelope. And sometimes they do this successfully with Wii, and sometimes they do this terribly, like with Wii U. So what do you think the NX would even look like? And what would you want it to look like?
Yeah, so this is... Okay, hold on. Man, I don't have a sound effect here, but I'm setting up my soapbox. Just imagine it. Build a picture in your minds. All right, I'm stepping up. Okay, nice. Good sound effect. I like it. All right. So the NX, we know. Okay, first half step back. Nintendo, like you said, it values innovation over everything. They don't want two consoles to be alike in any way, and you can see that through their entire console history. For better or for worse, I think the Super Nintendo was such a great iteration on the Nintendo. Adding the shoulder buttons, adding the Toaster face buttons, moving to 16-bit graphics. Beautiful, great. And 64, for the most part, was effective. The cartridge was a dumb idea. The controller is horrible. I don't care what anyone says. It's a bad controller. But the move to 3D graphics was cool. And with they really kind of invented 3D era games with Mario 64. The GameCube, despite detractors, I think was a pretty great console.
I love the GameCube. I'm a huge defender of the GameCube.
I still think the GameCube controller is one of the best controllers ergonomically. Albeit it only really works with Nintendo games because of your bizarre face button setup and your single shoulder buttons. But I think comfort-wise, the GameCube controller is probably the second most comfortable controller, just behind the PS4 controller.
I would completely agree with that ranking.
I know. It's controversial, though. People don't like the GameCube controller. I don't know
those people
why.
are stupid.
Well, and then I guess keep in mind you couldn't play first-person shooters on it because you don't have two analog sticks, unless you want to use a C stick. But I'm just comfort-wise, and for the games that Nintendo put on their platform, it's good. And the Wii, I think, for me, was a failure because I hated their controller. Their motion controls didn't work well until you had Wii Motion Plus, but they capitalized on a trend, and obviously, people went crazy for it. Then the Wii U, obviously, their only innovation was this gamepad, which is poorly implemented, poorly designed, not powerful enough to be a standalone tablet, just poor design choices all around. They still haven't innovated on online, and so that brings us to the NX. What I've seen going around everywhere, I've heard it talked in various podcasts, on forums, and what a lot of people say they want is iteration on the Wii U to make it essentially that it's a portable /home console, a handheld /home console, where you have something like a gamepad that has the full controller function, the full screen function, the full functionality of the gamepad, but improved, and it comes with like this dongle or something that you can plug it into your TV or broadcast it onto your TV to have a mixed portable and home experience. So an all-in-one kind of console like that, and then people are talking about how they want to be backwards compatible with Nintendo's like full library of stuff. So that's what everyone says they're wanting, from what I've seen around the web. Everyone wants this weird hybrid handheld home console thing. But here's the thing. I don't want that at all.
Why? Why don't you want that, Alex?
Because the only way Nintendo is going to succeed is to stop being Nintendo. Let me explain. Nintendo, since the Wii era, has been in its own ballpark. It's not playing against the Xbox. It's not playing against the PS4. It's its own thing, in some good ways, but in a lot of bad ways too. No third party development, no third party games are coming to the Wii U because no one wants to be there. So people are buying Nintendo consoles just for Nintendo-only things, and it makes it tough, right? Because then I'm buying a console just for a handful of exclusive games you're going to get in a year. It's certainly not compelling as your only home purchase, and it's not compelling as a next-gen purchase. And I think one of the big issues what would happen with something like this handheld, whatever plug-in home console mix, is you're not going to be able to achieve gameplay fidelity that you've got on even the PS4 and 360. There's no way a little handheld thing where the handheld is a console is going to be able to plug with a dongle into your TV and play 1080p 60 frames per second gameplay. It's not going to happen. I want Nintendo to be HD. I want Nintendo to embrace the future technology. And also, if you're doing this weird hybrid moving around, playing on TV thing, how's their online functionality going to work? Nintendo is horrible with their implementation of their gaming network. I don't even know what's called. Their Miiverse, I guess, is what's on the Wii U. And so I really want them to embrace being Nintendo and have these great games and have, their other things, but acknowledge that innovation for innovation's sake is not always a good thing. And I want them to kind of rein it in and make this dedicated home console that's powerful, has functional online, that gets third-party publishers to put their games on the Nintendo console, and to have, high-resolution gaming as powerful, maybe if not even more powerful than the PS4 and the Xbox One.
Well, man, if all that stuff comes true, then I will be looking out my window to see if I can't shoot me some flying bacon, because I cannot possibly see them doing all that stuff. But I agree with you about a lot of your points. I want to see Nintendo move into the future, or at least into the present, with their gaming system. I mean, honestly, if the NX were on the same graphical and kind of hardware capability level as the PS4 and the Xbox One, I would be satisfied with that. I would like to see them do more in terms of making their games accessible to gamers who want to just kind of play a game. I felt like the Wii U and the Wii, especially the Wii, kind of cut off people like me who don't want to wave their arms around, because there were so many games that even if they did it badly, you had to do that, right? Like, you had to play it with waving your arms around, or it just lost a lot of what it was designed for. So I want to see them go back to kind of giving us a sit on your butt gamer experience for some games. I'd also like to see them bring third-party titles, and maybe even if they're not the same third-party titles, I'd like to see third-party titles that do something interesting with the system, right? I don't need to play Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty on my Nintendo. I just want to see something that's not Zelda, that's not Donkey Kong, that's not Splatoon, as much as everyone's raving about Splatoon. I want to see something that is not coming from Nintendo, but takes advantage of their system.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's what I meant. And thanks for kind of clarifying that for folks. I don't need to play all the same third-party games on Nintendo, but a Nintendo machine can't just be the only games you ever get are Nintendo published games. It's just you're never going to get enough games to kind of justify the purchase. Sure, you might get 10 games over the course of 3 years, but is that really worth it? Like 3.3 games a year? It's not worth it to me. And then I think one of the things, again, I'm sure people who listen to this might be like, well, Alex, you're dumb. Do you really need an HD first-person shooter Mario game? And that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say if you have console parity that you can run at least 1080p 30 frames per second games, or have these kind of graphics, it allows developers to have a full spectrum of kinds of games they can make. You can still make 2D games and, whatever, all these different retro kind of games, but also will let people make other kind of games that run and work well on the system. And I'm just afraid that if you go, what people are talking about, this weird handheld console plug-in hybrid machine, you're not going to be able to have those kind of experiences. And again, it's going to be a niche device that doesn't do Nintendo any favors. And honestly, for as long as I hem and hawed about that, my ideal world is just Nintendo turns into a software publisher and not a hardware manufacturer anymore. Because I would love to play Nintendo games on my PS4. I would love it.
Well, I don't know if we'll see that anytime soon, but it would be really cool, wouldn't it?
No way. No, they would fight kicking and screaming for that. And then another thing, I think, I don't think Nintendo's going to do something like that handheld thing anyway, because they're just trying to snuff out their new Nintendo 3DS. They introduced that just earlier this year. It would seem bizarre that the next year they're like, oh, hey, well, that's invalidated because now you have a handheld that is also as powerful as a home console.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. And we talked about this earlier, but you just wrote about handheld gaming. And in the world of handheld gaming, how do you think that new 3DS stacks up?
I think it's fine, whatever. It's just the 3DS. The 3DS is a nice console. I think the form factor is good. It feels like a toy, but not in a bad way. I think that's kind of part of its success is because it feels like a toy, whereas like the Vita feels like a very expensive piece of really high-end hardware, and that's like, I guess if I were a parent, I'd feel weird about like giving my kid basically a second smartphone with a Vita. But I personally have not had hands-on with a new 3DS, but I enjoyed my time with 3DS, and I think it's good, whatever. It just, again, it's an issue for Nintendo, because I'm not even sure, like, other than the C-Stick and, like, slightly better processors, what's different between the two consoles. And, like, I know some games only run on the new 3DS, but that list is pretty small, so why would I even need it if I have a 3DS already? I don't know. But yes, I did write a piece on the impactfactor.blogspot.com about why we need handheld consoles for now.
Yeah, man, well,
So
good
check it
stuff.
out.
Yeah, please check out that article. It's a good one, and one of the briefer articles on the Impact Factor. So
I'm trying to get better at reading myself in.
something you can enjoy when you don't have a half hour to sit down and read.
Hey, God dang it.
I'm just
All right.
I'm just giving Alex trouble here. His more in-depth pieces are great, and they're it's nice to see pieces that go and dive deeper than a lot of the kind of surface level stuff that you'll read on other websites. So just make sure you have some time before you sit down to read one.
No, maybe that's why no one reads my blog. Dang it.
Yeah, I read your blog, man.
All right. What's your next story?
All right, well, my next story is precisely one of those surface-level stories I was just complaining about. It's that we have more rumors about characters in Super Street Fighter V.
Ooh, rumor mill's a churning.
That's
What
right.
we got?
2 new characters rumored to be coming to the game. Alex and
Yeah.
Urian, man.
Woohoo.
Yeah, dude.
Street Fighter 5. I know Street Fighter fans are excited. I think non-Street Fighter fans don't know who the heck these characters are.
Okay, well, these are 2 characters that haven't been in the Street Fighter universe since Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Alex...
That's for people. That's a very long time ago.
How long ago was that, dude?
I don't even know, but like I know it might not sound like this is Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 3, but I guarantee you, there's been many, many years between Street Fighter 3 Third Strike and Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So these 2 characters, you've got Alex, who is a hybrid grappler and brawler type character. Can you tell us what that means, Alex?
Yeah. So you can see his gameplay in Third Strike. But he's got really good command grabs, like Zangief. So basically, command grab is you input a movement and it does a grab instead of like a fireball or something like that. But then a brawler is he's also got a lot of good kicks, a lot of good like spacing with kicks and punches, something a la like Guile, who's got long range and high damage. And so Alex is a very unique playstyle. Is he's okay being a little bit further away from you than most other grapplers. Like Zangief wants to be right on top of you, whereas Alex can do fine from a little bit further away, but he's also got very powerful very powerful grab options if you need to come in on him and be the aggressor. And so he's just like an interesting playstyle. There's not really any other hybrid brawler, grappler characters in the Street Fighter universe, so it's cool to see him being included.
Yeah, I would really...
And then Urian.
Yeah, well, before we move on from Alex real fast,
Okay,
I would be really excited to see him in the game, because watching Alex play against other characters can be a lot of fun, right? Because no match is the same.
Yeah. He's always got to have very different spacing depending on who. Like, in some matches, he wants to be the aggressor and be on top of someone and be a grappler. In other matches, he wants to space people out. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
All right, and then Urian, right, his mix-ups are ridiculous. They're ridiculous.
Yeah, they're gross. So, his fighting style is, I don't know, he's basically just a standard kind of fighter. He's got some projectiles. He's got good buttons, as they say. But one of his things that really sets him apart from other people is he's got teleport mix-ups, and then one of his kind of the things that really stands out in people's minds about him is one of his supers. He creates this energy wall that, if he spaces it right, is an energy wall that appears behind you and moves towards you. And so he can be attacking your back with this energy wall and attacking your front at the same time, which makes it so hard to block. And so I'm really excited to have him in there because he's going to be so different, because that's learning how to get around him and learning, Capcom and the Street Fighter team and Combo Fiend have really said that this game wants to get back to a lot of these basics of spacing and footsies and knowing how to block and knowing how to use moves, counter people's moves. And I think Urian is a perfect character for that. You really need to know how to play against him to be able to counter him. It's not necessarily that, he's unique in any other way, but he's very unique to play against. And I think that kind of goes along with the kind of messaging they've been trying to get across with Street Fighter V.
Right, and any character that makes matches more entertaining to watch, that could make tournaments possibly more entertaining to watch, I'm all for. So, keeping my fingers crossed that we will be seeing both of these characters in Street Fighter V.
Oh yeah, and you gotta look up some combos with Yuri and his energy wall, because he could hit, like if you messed up your block, he'd like hit you, you'd bounce, and you'd jump and hit you and you'd bounce, and then he'd like do another combo again you and bounce you again. Like, it's crazy. He could get like 10 hit combos bouncing you back and forth between his punches and the energy wall behind you.
Basically, he plays ping pong with you off his energy ball.
Basically, yeah, you are his ping pong ball.
Which would be actually a wonderful battle cry in the middle of a tournament. You my ping pong ball! You my ping pong ball!
But I guess we have to keep this is even a heftier dosage of salt, because a lot of leaks like this, they'll come with an associated image or GIF or video or something. This is just word of mouth. A source close to Capcom said that these are two characters, but so we just have a person's word.
Yeah, these are totally unsubstantiated. We're just enjoying them because we'll take any excuse to talk about Street Fighter.
Yeah. Speaking of unsubstantiated rumors, this one maybe with potentially a little bit more evidence. Is there a new Superman game being developed by Warner Brothers Montreal? It looks like there may be.
Oh, the Superman? No, we are not developing the Superman.
The Superman.
The Superman.
So with Arkham Knight launching, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and people loving it, people are kind of curious what WB Montreal and Rocksteady might be doing. So an image leaked that showed Superman looking very kind of Rocksteady-y, WB Montreal-y. Again, WB Montreal is the studio that made Batman Arkham Origins, I believe is the name of the title, the kind of the title that was put out in between Arkham City and Arkham Knight.
The not good edition in the Batman series.
The less good edition, not even if included in the Batman trilogy. So, ouch. But yeah, so it showed Superman in his like new 52 outfit, and at first it was just an image, and so people were like, oh, that looks really fake. And then the leaker said, well, it's not fake, and then released a GIF of like the Superman moving around. So it looks pretty clear that something, unless they spent a lot of time to make this fake, that something is happening maybe at WB Montreal. But so as the kind of story developed, because it kind of came late last week, WB Montreal has denied that they're making a Superman game. Rocksteady has said they're absolutely not working on a Superman game. Some more rumors started circulating that instead they're working on a Suicide Squad game, maybe to coincide with the Suicide Squad movie that's coming up. But Fliss, what do you think? So maybe this is not true, and I've heard some people think maybe it's some sort of image from a potential like iOS, like stupid fighting game, free to play thing or whatever. What do you think? Would you be excited for a Superman game from WB Montreal?
I would be interested in it. I don't know if I would go so far as to say as I would be excited about it. I would be eager to see what the reviews said. I like story-based games. I don't, in Arkham Knight, right, and in all of those Arkham games, the best part of it is when you can just beat up a whole bunch of bad guys and like your health's starting to get low and you string together some super great combo and you're throwing another guy into another guy and you're just feeling like Batman. And it's those moments where you're just like, I'm Batman, or should I say, I'm Batman. But it's right. It's those moments.
Where's the Joker?
Yeah, it's those moments that are great about those games, and I don't have a need to feel like I'm Superman because Superman is lame. Nobody wants to be Superman. So, what would I do? How would I take damage in a Superman game? Like, does every enemy have kryptonite?
Yeah, I feel like a Superman game couldn't be on Earth, right? He's OP, please nerf. So maybe you'd have to put him in some alien planet or something.
Yeah, you'd have to do something. So the idea that they could be making a Suicide Squad game is definitely what I would prefer.
Yeah, you're excited about that.
Yeah, man. Because I just think even if we're just like Mario Party of Death, it would be so great. I mean.
Yeah, because those people in the Suicide Squad are so interesting, Boomerang Guy, or the guy that fights with ropes. What compelling powers.
Okay, but Deadshot and Harley Quinn.
Yeah, but they're like the only two cool people on the whole Suicide Squad.
Isn't that enough?
I don't know. It's not enough for me.
I'm just saying I love
Not
me some
enough.
Harley Quinn. Almost as much as I like
Mr.
Catwoman.
J!
Almost as much as I like Catwoman.
Almost as-
And I love Catwoman.
Yeah, we'll have to get into this whole. We'll get into that in a little bit in Experimental Methods. Catwoman. I've been playing that Batman Arkham Knight. There's some interesting stuff there.
Are there going to be spoilers?
No,
Am I going to
no,
have to turn off my
really.
own podcast?
Yeah, you got to turn off your own podcast. Yeah, so I mean, I saw a lot of people being excited about this. I think it'd be cool. I think there's potential for a good Superman game, since like the last Superman game was Superman 64, the game everyone loves to hate because it's just so bad.
I don't even know that I've ever played that game.
You should be thanking your lucky stars you never played that game. That game is horrible. Most people can't even like get past the first thing because you have to fly through these rings, but the controls are god awful and it's like really hard, and it's just bad. It's a bad game. It's a very bad game. It's historically one of the worst games of all time. So there's a lot of room for putting out a decent Superman game.
Would you play a Superman game though?
It depends. I mean, I like Batman fine, but the main reason I got into the Batman, the Rocksteady Batman trilogy is because it looked so great, it looked so fun, and obviously having played them, that they're just great games. So if a Superman game is a great game, sure, I'd absolutely play it. Now, what that game needs to be, I'm not sure about. I've heard some talk like people would like a kind of an open world, if destruction kind of game, like if you're set on like an alien planet, Superman could go around destroying everything with wanton, disregard, or something like that. It's just very challenging. I think it's very challenging to make a compelling Superman game.
And I know this is not really on the table, especially given the failure of the movie, but if we're gonna go around destroying things on an alien world, I would almost just rather have a Green Lantern game
Or Planet Hulk game.
Yeah, well, this is now we're changing over to Marvel, and
let's just make it a Marvel game.
We've talked about this before, but Alex and I are both Marvels. We've been Marvels for a long, long time. So anytime there's a DC property, we're always going to be like, well, we'll wait and see, I guess.
We'll wait and see.
And as frustrated as the Marvel movies have made us recently, we still, like a lot of Marvel games and a lot of the stuff that Marvel puts out. So, but hey, speaking of being excited about stuff, you've got a game here that is not a rumor that you're getting pumped about. Why don't you tell me about that, man?
Yeah, well, a little less pumped after I read some details. Yeah, so this week, it was announced that there's going to be a new Rayman game. It looks very similar to the Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends games, which have been on the PS3 and PS4 respectively, at least the ones that I played. They're great platformers. They're fun. They're beautifully designed. If you check my blog, I have a review for Rayman Legends. I thought it was an exceptional game. I gave it 4 out of 5. I think so it gets so much right. And so I'm always in the market for a new Rayman game. They're fun. They're easy to sit down and play with. So I saw Rayman Adventures, and it looked great. It looked fun. But then it's iOS smartphone tablet only.
What?
Why? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they felt like they could make the budget smaller or get more money out of it. So to be fair, Ubisoft has made some Rayman iOS mobile games. I think the most recent one was Rayman Run Fiesta or something. They both have been endless runner games. But this one looks at least from their first trailer, that it's more of like a standard kind of platformer game. But I'm not sure really how that works, given a touch infrastructure and touch tap stuff. So I'm excited, I guess. I mean, I don't have a phone or an iPad that could run this game, so maybe I'm not excited, but it's cool looking. It looks good for a mobile game. That's for sure.
So, Alex, you got to build your soapbox here. I think I should build my rant box. To climb
all right. Step down. No, okay. Look, you got a rant pulpit. You got a pulpit here.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna walk into my pulpit.
Climb the stairs. Climb the stairs. Get to your pulpit.
Come
on.
All right.
I
hate mobile games. I hate them. Every time I play a mobile game, I end up unfulfilled. The only mobile games that I've really, really enjoyed are Hearthstone and Hearthstone. That's all I've really enjoyed on mobile.
Wow, you ignorant, man. There's a lot of great mobile games.
What?
Okay.
Give me an example of a great mobile game. A mobile game that will just make me want to stop playing Demon's Souls. And
Okay, well, no, mobile games aren't going to replace console games, but they're good experiences on there. You got Monument Valley, Framed, Sword and Sorcery. Those are all only on mobile. And then that's not even getting into the tons of like PC games that are ported onto mobile successfully, like VVV. You have Faster Than Light. You've got XCOM Enemy Unknown.
yeah, but every time you port something on mobile, it loses something. It's just like the mobile screen is tiny. I don't like touch controls. I know we've covered. I'm an old man here. I like
man.
Buttons.
So ignorant.
I believe you mean ignorant, young sir.
Nah, ignorant. We're using ignorant here. It's how the kids say it. You wouldn't know.
What about you, buddy? I mean, you've already got one foot in the grave. This guy just turned 26.
Yeah, Mona Lisa wished me happy birthday too. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Fliss?
I promised you a work of art.
You did promise me a work of art.
So I gave you one. You know what's not a work of art? So
did.
many mobile games. There's so much junk on mobile.
That's true. But I'd say there's so much junk on Steam.
I don't use Steam very much. I'm not a PC gamer.
Well, okay, can't argue that. There's a lot of great experiences on mobile, and we're getting more and more great experiences on mobile. But, as I wrote about in my piece, there are a lot of games that I don't think can ever work on mobile successfully. And a standard kind of platformer like Rayman, I don't think works very well on a mobile. So we'll see how, I could see if they make you auto run, but that's not really fun. So you just having to jump and slide and stuff like that. But I like to be able to control my movement. So we'll see what they do. I don't know. People like their endless runners, so maybe they'll do a good job with this. It's something.
All right, well, hey everybody, if you have a mobile game that you really like, if you've got a mobile experience that you think could change my mind about mobile, I have an iPhone, I run iOS, so if it's available on that, let me know. You can tweet at me at @thecfliss on Twitter. You can also email us here at the Impact Factor to tell us about it, and that's impactfactorpodcast @gmail.com. And speaking of our email, we just got a listener letter, didn't we, Alex?
We did get a listener letter. Whoa! Our mailbag had mail in it. Oh, yeah. All right. We have a listener letter from a listener, Thomas F.
Yeah, and
he makes a lot of great points, which we'll probably get to over the course of several episodes. But Fliss, go through. Last week we talked a lot about VR. It was our perspectives section, which we'll get to here in a second. I think we had a pretty good discussion. I think we could say that.
I certainly enjoyed it.
But certainly there's a lot of heated opinions, a lot of mixed opinions, a lot of mixed feelings. But Thomas brings up a point about VR that we didn't really talk about. So Fliss, why don't you run us a little bit through this email?
All right, man. Well, hey, he brought up, like you said, some great points about VR, but he said that we missed one big part of VR, which is vehicle-oriented simulation games. Games like War Thunder, Forza, or Microsoft Flight Simulator, and maybe even Star Citizen are games that he thinks would be a great fit for VR and could support Oculus. Some of them already do support Oculus. So, although we've got maybe a small market for quote-unquote serious sim players, it's something that could be a great VR experience. And I think he makes some great points about, VR putting you in the driver's seat of something like a race car or a warplane or a battleship.
I mean, certainly we've discussed this before, and I think our listener Thomas would agree that I think VR is going to live and die at first at least, by these really, really hardcore people. And I don't think you get anyone more hardcore about spending lots of premium dollars into games than these simulator gamers.
Well, someone who also spends a lot of money on their games are arcade goers. And we're going to talk later in this episode, actually, about some of the problems and historical issues arcades have had and the way they're fading away in the United States right now. But the arcades are still pretty vital in Japan, especially in the big cities. And as Thomas points out, we haven't seen very many VR games coming out of Japan. Certainly nothing appropriate for your younger children out there, and probably not even appropriate for the slightly older children out there. But there's a real chance, and we talked about this in the last episode, that you need to get people hands-on with VR, and arcade would be a great place to do that. It's just nobody's made an arcade experience yet. Certainly not that I've seen in Japan, and nothing I've read about.
No, and there have been new kind of virtual-esque reality kind of games, but I've seen that they've just been kind of going further than the VR games we had before, where you sit in a giant machine and the images is presented around the machine, and then the machine will like say a spaceship one, where the ship will move around and there'll be like steam and stuff. So kind of these more kind of a mix of simulated reality plus virtual reality, but not truly VR headsets. And I think, one of the issues we talked about with VR is being able to get VR onto people's heads is going to be crucial for people buying it. And I think if arcades still existed, arcades would be a great place to do that.
Well, so Alex, do you think that this simulation market, combined with a few more kind of other hardcore markets combining together, would be enough to get VR the boost it needs to become a more mainstream thing?
The thing is, I don't think VR is going to become mainstream until several years after its release. And I think if these companies are smart, like Facebook with Oculus, which I would have to assume they are, they know it's not going to be a success right away. They're planning on losing money on this until basically it gets around enough and they can get a cheap enough model, and they can get a model that runs on not a $1,000 PC to be able to, get it into the hands of people. But I think certainly during these early years of VR as a consumer product, targeting hardcore audiences, like Thomas mentioned, these these vehicle-oriented simulation games would be a great step. And it's strange that they haven't.
Yeah, and, I knew that he'd made a great point as soon as I read it, because I was just like, oh yeah, I'm like one of the least excited people about VR, and I would totally play a Gundam VR game. I would absolutely play...
That sounds awesome.
I would absolutely play a game that lets me, be in the turret of my tank. I would totally do that. So, that's selling me right away just on the concept.
Yeah. And, I mean, the only thing I can think of to mind is there's this EVE Valkyrie demo. So by the makers of EVE Online, and you can kind of pilot a spaceship. And that's been one of these Oculus demos that's been around at trade shows forever. But aside from that, I can't think of anything. And it's a missed opportunity, I think. Missed opportunity. But I think VR is a series of missed opportunities. And a series of stuff that... VR. If you want to email us back, Thomas, I'd be interested to see if you're planning on getting a VR headset, since I would assume, given some of the games that you've mentioned, if you probably have a computer that's pretty close to being able to run VR successfully. So
let us know. We need to hear the voice of the PC gamer.
Let us know. The voice of the PC gamer. He makes a lot of great points here. Again, this is just half of an excellent email. I'm almost certainly going to get to it, maybe even this week, but maybe next week. So please, thank you so much, Thomas, for sending us an email.
We really appreciate it.
Any listener, I guarantee you, if you send us an email, we're going to talk about it on the show. So you want to be e-famous? Do it. You want to.
Your voice will be heard and will be talked about.
Will be heard. So we'd love to hear from the community more of the news items and more of the stories that you thought had the biggest impact. So please feel free to shoot us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. So that's impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. So now it's time to put things in perspective. Perspectives is part of the show, when any number of things can happen. In academia, it's when investigators share their opinions with the community at large. Here, it's a revolving section where we experiment with what's worth discussing. Usually, Fliss and I will pick out an editorial piece and discuss it together, which is what we've done today. Let's get it started. Fliss, this is a doozy of a piece. It's great. It pulls at both your and my heartstrings. I know that. What are we looking at today?
Okay, well, today we've got an excellent article. It's a little bit of an older piece, but it's a good one, and it's especially relevant as we approach EVO, because so many of those fighting games grew up in the arcades, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. Today's article is For Amusement Only, The Life and Death of the American Arcade by Laura June, and she published that over on Verge.
Yeah, so this is a 2013 article, so again, a couple years behind us, but it's a lengthy, well-researched, well-written, kind of beautiful piece about the life and death, as she said here, of the arcade. And the arcade is such an important thing in pop culture and gamer culture, and certainly fighting game culture is something Fliss and I like to both follow pretty closely. So it's absolutely worth discussing today. So Fliss, would you mind giving the listeners here just a general kind of run through of some of the things that Laura June talks about in this article?
I'd love to. Well, we're definitely running into my realm here of the social sciences because she takes a wonderful historical approach to analyzing why the time was right, why the environment was right, why everything kind of came together in the late 70s and through the 80s for the American arcade to flourish, and the way that as we headed into the 90s, things kind of started to collapse. And she looks at some really great different things. She looks at the demographics, she looks at legal stuff, she traces the history of the arcade all the way back to pinball machines before pinball machines had flippers, so we're going all the way back to the 1920s here. So this is a really comprehensive historical and social analysis of how the arcade came to be and how it came to be undone.
Yeah, and I loved reading about certain ages, especially as they got closer to our generation. But first, the golden age of the late 70s to early 80s of arcade gaming was something I think is of note. This is when you had the transition from pretty much being exclusively pinball arcades to starting to have these video game consoles. And I remember, and as she wrote, there's a huge pushback as, these arcades are essentially evolving in a way that no one could have predicted. But how really the Pac-Man console was what kind of really solidified this video game arcade generation, which you and I were born into, Fliss. And because, you just see all those things like the old Donkey Kong machines and Pac-Man and the Space Commander and Space Invaders and all these kind of great games and Galaga machines that people grew up with. But for you and I know the golden age was the early 90s. And that was when Street Fighter II was released on an arcade cabinet in 1991 that she wrote about. That kind of reinvigorated a kind of fading arcade scene to bring about this new kind of fervor of fighting games in arcades. And, of course, it inspired clones and everything else, and you had your Mortal Kombats. And it's just great to see because, we both have a lot of kind of varied arcade experiences in our childhood. So, Fliss, tell me a little bit about, when we're thinking about this, what's kind of your earliest memory of an arcade?
Well, for me, the earliest memory I have of running into a quote-unquote arcade, right, is the arcade machines in pizza places that I would go to with my family. And you'd, get near the end of the meal, my parents would be kind of wanting to relax a little bit and enjoy the rest of it, and they'd give my brother and I a few quarters to go run over and mash some buttons on a pinball machine or an arcade cabinet. And this is actually where I first encountered Tekken and Tekken Tag.
Ooh, nice.
And so I think that I have a fondness for Tekken that you don't necessarily share, in part because that was one of the arcade machines that I first encountered, and I think that's why I still play Panda and Kuma to this day, because, I was a little kid, I'm like, I'm going to play the big-ass bear! That'll be great! But that's one of my first encounters with it, and then, moving on from that, right, I encountered them in a tilt at one of the St. Louis malls. Right? One of the few remaining tilts in the world at that point. And so the tilt was this kind of, I guess, entertainment zone. It had like a playground and like a ball pit and a bunch of other stuff, but it also had claw machines and arcade cabinets lining several floors. And unfortunately, as I got older, the amount of space devoted to the arcade machines got smaller and smaller and smaller. But when I first started going there, it was great. It was awesome. They still had an old Galaga machine. They had Space Invaders. They had Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man. They had the Ms. Pac-Man where it was laid into the table so that you could keep your Coke right there.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, that was nice. I like that.
So I have very fond memories of getting to play some of these early machines right before they were getting phased out.
Yeah. And for me, you want to know why I'm garbage at bowling? It's because at the bowling alley, they had arcade machines there. And that's all I would ever do. My family would want me to bowl. I'd go up and I'd bowl my thing, and I'd take all my hard-earned quarters, and I'd go stick them into the Street Fighter machine. I played a lot of Street Fighter 2, and I played a lot of Mortal Kombat. Those were my arcade machines. And then, of course, everywhere we went that had an arcade machine, I'd be on that. And I think one of the ones that really stuck out for me that, like, these are serious, fun games is when I think it was a Tilt or something similar. A place had a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade cabinet. I spent a lot of time on that cabinet. I loved Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That game.
I'm glad that you would bring up Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I was hoping that would come up in this discussion because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is perhaps the fighting game that made me first begin to appreciate what you could do in a fighting game, because I still remember the first time I actually really figured out a combo, which was how to throw Captain America's shield in that game.
That quarter circle forward punch.
Yeah, man, you know it. And you know why? Because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 sat in the comic book store, the Fantasy Shop in St. Louis, and I would go there.
Nice.
I would ride my bike. It was quite a bike ride. It was about a 45-minute bike ride. I would ride my bike there to pick up Fantastic Four, Captain America, and Justice League comics. And I would get there. I eventually dropped off on the Justice League and just followed my Marvel. Just too expensive for a kid of my age to be able to pick up 3 different comics every month and play the arcade machine. But man, I played Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I loved it. Blackheart scared the living bejesus out of me.
Blackheart is scary. It's this crazy demon thing. And the thing is, he was good too. So like when you were playing against people, a lot of times people would pick Blackheart, and he was hard to go against. Though honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I played Cable and Sentinel. I played Cable and Sentinel. You can hate me all you want.
You're that guy.
I just liked him. I liked Cable, Sentinel, and Cyclops, and all those people I later found out are like high-tier characters in that game. Oh, whoops.
You could just smell the high tier. You were just like, something speaks to me about this character.
Something about Sentinel being so cheap and I can win with him single-handedly. I don't know.
Some things don't change.
Oh, man. Yeah, and then the last one, we're running along on this, but the last one, our car broke down on a road trip, and we were stuck at a hotel in Rolla, Missouri for like 3 days. So it was terrible. Because Rolla, Missouri, I don't know. Sorry for anyone who's been there or lives there, but it's a terrible place.
That sounds like a way you could reform a criminal.
I know, right? But so we had nothing to do. I had already finished all of my like travel stuff because we had just been visiting my grandparents elsewhere in the state. But there was an arcade machine down by like the ice machine on the ground floor, and it was a Street Fighter 2 arcade machine. And so for 3 days straight, I was playing Street Fighter 2 on an arcade machine. It's so great. It's so great. So then moving into our more adult lives, as the article talks about, it's essentially arcades are dead. There's a couple arcades still left, which I want to get to at the end of our piece, which one of them actually needs your support to this day. But so you and I spent a lot of our summer days going to Dave & Buster's.
Yeah.
Which isn't really an arcade, but kind of has some of the same stuff that arcade have.
So this article gives a very strict definition of what an arcade is, and that says that an arcade is a place where they make their money from the games. And Dave & Buster's does not make their money from the games, right? Dave & Buster's makes their money from alcohol and food sales. This article also does a great job of distinguishing between fighting games and other arcade games where you're kind of just playing the game for the game, and redemption games, which are games that pay out tickets that you can later redeem for little prizes. And actually, when I was going to places like Chuck E. Cheese with my family, which is kind of sort of an arcade,
kind of.
Towing the line.
But they probably make more money off of pizza.
Yeah, towing the line, and we're going to get into that here in a minute more with Dave & Buster's. But when I was going there, I actually loved those redemption games. And my favorite ones of those were the ones where it combined an arcade cabinet, right? Where you had to beat a certain level, right? Completely digital, nothing physical. And you had to beat something on there to get your tickets. And that was great. There was a game that was a pirate ship game where you had a steering wheel and you had to pilot your ship through various monsters and reefs and stuff like that to get to the end that still sticks out in my mind to this day. So going into that kind of family experience is something that I think Dave & Buster's really capitalized on, right? Because you have people like you and me who are used to sharing this stuff with our families, with our siblings, and as we get older, right, we want to share it with each other, we want to share it with our now getting surprisingly old siblings, and we want to be able to do that in a place where we can maybe have a drink if we want to. So I think Dave & Buster's is doing a great job of keeping kind of an arcade feeling alive, even if it's not a traditional arcade setting.
Yeah, right. You're not going to find Space Invader. You're not going to find any of those old cabinets there. You hardly, if ever, find fighting cabinets there. But they still have like a lot of those kind of on-rail shooter games.
Which I love.
And some of those old school, like the Jurassic Park, like the vehicle kind of racing games. It kind of keeps that alive. And I think that's something fun that if Fliss and I lived in the same place, we would probably still be going to Dave & Buster's, because it's just a fun way to kind of relive some of that same feeling as an arcade without having that arcade experience. But I guess we're running a little bit long. But Fliss, tell us a little bit about your arcade experience you've had in Japan, because Japan is where, although they're still not the biggest moneymakers, they're still not as big as they had been, Japanese arcades are still quite large, certainly much larger than here where they're dead.
Yeah, man, the Japanese arcade scene is amazing. I mean, it's a revelation for someone who grew up in the United States. Especially, I've had the good fortune to be able to go to Akihabara, which is a neighborhood of Tokyo, which is kind of a mecca for anime culture, for nerd culture here in Japan, but also for games culture and electronics culture here. And so there's a lot of great shops there and a lot of great arcades that have been there for a long time, some of which are unfortunately in a little bit of danger right now, no thanks to the Japanese government. And but the scene there is amazing, because what you can do is you can still go there and meet people who are amazing and play against people who are amazing on these games. People still go there to train, to meet people, to meet the competition, and to get better. It's a place where you don't go online. You go and you go sit next to somebody or sit across from somebody to play them and get better at these games. So it's expensive, because instead of quarters, you have to feed the machines dollar coins.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
That's why the government is actually hurting them right now, because there's just been a tax hike from 5% to 8%. And if you're working on a one-coin game, the arcade has to bear that. They can't pass that on to the consumer.
Oh, man.
And they're looking at raising that up to 10%. So that's starting to be a significant chunk out of what a game makes, right? That's 5% off of every single coin. So That's a problem. But if you have the chance to go to Akihabara, I want to recommend that you go to an arcade called Hey. It's just off the main strip. They actually have a window on the main strip that you can get into. It is a place where you can go in there and you can still play old arcade cabinets. You can still play the same Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinet that Alex played on. You can still play the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 arcade cabinet that I played on. And you can do that, and you can also go and see really top-level competition for modern games like Super Street Fighter 4, and they still organize tournaments on the weekends where you can go and you can compete for cash prizes. So an amazing culture, a great way to meet people. It's awesome. If I lived anywhere close to a place that had a really good arcade scene, I would be there all the time.
Yeah. So did you play any fighting games? Play against any killers here in Japan?
So my fighting game of choice here in Japan is actually the Extreme vs. Gundam series, which is, It's not necessarily a fighting game per se. It's kind of a third-person mech arena battle game, but it uses a lot of fighting game inputs and fighting game mechanics, and you do play it on an arcade stick. So I have played that, and I have gotten my butt kicked intensely. But I wouldn't trade it for the world.
As to be expected.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's
Nice.
great. When I come back to the States, I will definitely be recruiting you to play that game with me.
Hey, come live in the Bay Area. I'll play any game with you. Any game.
That is a powerful offer.
I'm selling you hard. Folks, you gotta convince him to come here. But the reason we're talking all this, and I guess we gotta wrap this up so we can do the rest of our show, is that EVO, our Evolution 2015, is happening next weekend. So you'll be hearing this on Friday the 10th. The weekend after that, so the 17th, is the first day of EVO, Friday the 17th, and it goes through that Sunday. It's the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. It's so exciting. It's so great to see. I think the fighting game community does so much about getting esports and video game competitions right. It's great. You can see 1v1 competitors and really highly skill-intensive things. They're athletes. They're also, as we've seen from some recent videos, are also embracing some of the things that Fliss has written about and being kind of showboats and really letting their personalities come out both inside and outside of the game. I think it would behoove you to not at least spend some time on Sunday watching the finals. These are so exciting. It's so well produced. The fighting game community has worked hard to be legitimate. They're working against a very hard stigma, because even you, Fliss, mentioned it, that fighting games are hard to get into. And I would argue they're not that much harder to get into than a first-person shooter or a MOBA, but people play those. And so I think you would do yourself a favor and watch EVO 23. We'll talk about it next week, too, because our podcast will be up on day one of EVO. But please, if any of the stuff we've talked about with the arcades or fighting games or any of that stuff, any of it interests you, or even if it didn't, tune into EVO 2015. That's this next weekend, the 17th through 19th. I think you'll enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and as we get ready for EVO, which is this huge, wonderful nerd gathering where we can all come together and celebrate fighting games and celebrate really great fighting game play and high-level competition, keep in mind to be welcoming. One of the things that we didn't get to touch on very much, but is brought up in this article, is that arcades were a place where teenagers could come together without adult supervision or with limited adult supervision to kind of create their own culture. And, Alex and I, we didn't necessarily get to experience that in arcades, but we did have people who mentored us at comic book shops, people who helped us kind of know that it was okay to like these things, that it was okay to be a nerd. And I think that it's more important than ever, as nerd culture becomes mainstream, to let the people who are really hardcore about it, who are really into it, who are not just passively interested in this stuff, to know that there is a place for them. And so when you see that kind of gangly teenager and you're just like, oh god, another punk kid, take a minute to remember that might have been you at one point, and that we need to create a place where everyone is welcome and where we kind of take care of our own.
Absolutely. No better way to end it. So now that our work is... So that was for your amusement, or for amusement only, The Life and Death of the American Arcade by Laura June, posted on Verge. The link to the article will be in our show notes. So now that our work is done and logged, let's get into our experimental methods.
Experimental methods.
In experimental methods, Fliss and I talk about the video games we've been playing recently. No papers or pipettes, cells, or census here, just our words. We look at what works, what doesn't, and what we're looking forward to testing. Fliss, what experiments have you been running this week?
Well, as per our wager in the last podcast...
Ooh. For folks who didn't listen, I bet Fliss that he, within 6 weeks, I guess 5 weeks, or a little bit over 5 weeks now, he has to beat Demon Souls. If he does not, he has to buy me a hat. If he does, I have to buy him a hat.
That's right, and I made some progress this week. I beat 1-1, which is exciting, and I'm making progress into the next level right now, which is difficult. The game is definitely more difficult than I expected. Walking into it, I was definitely like, oh, well, I play some video games. I kind of know what to do. And within, probably about my first hour of playing, I was just like, okay, I need to revert back to like paranoid in the arcade. If I die, I'm losing money. Like it's souls, right? So it's not as physically painful. It's just more emotionally painful when I die and lose those souls.
Yep. No, my precious souls, my currency and experience points, all gone.
Right. So that moment when I can get back to a bloodstain and reclaim those souls, I'm just like, witness me!
Bringing it full circle to last episode here, Fliss. I like it.
But yeah, right now, actually, the dudes I'm kind of having trouble with in the second level right now, I wouldn't say trouble with, but are challenging me.
Second level, are you on 1-2 or 2-1?
I'm on the Burrowers.
Did you go past the Phalanx boss at that area, or did you go to a different
I went to a different warp stone, so 2-1.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's generally advisable you go like through level 1s and then go through level 2s. Then go through level 2s.
Right, so I'm on... Are you just leading me astray?
I'm not leading you astray. I guarantee you that's how people usually suggest
it. I'm trying to minimize my exposure to online stuff right now. As we get closer to the deadline, I might start breaking down and looking stuff up, especially when it comes to boss fights. I've already acknowledged that when we get later in it, my pride might get sacrificed to the internets. But the thing that's challenging me right now in 2-1 are the kind of like beefeater looking guys who cast the fireballs at you, because you take one hit from those without your shield up and just whoa,
you're dead.
That's so much damage.
That's why you gotta dodge past them.
Yeah,
don't block when you can dodge.
Well, and I'm working on that, but I'm also playing Knight, right? So
you fool, I told you to go royal, you fool.
Well, if again, if I'm not making progress,
not that far.
I'm willing to restart and go back. I've heard a lot of people have had that experience, but I'm going to try and beat it with Knight. For one thing, just that beautiful Maximilian fluted armor, which I'm repairing all the time now.
You can wear armor as a royal. I'm just saying.
Well, anyway, what I'm doing right now is I'm rocking a battle axe that I enhanced.
Nice, good. You upgrade your weapons. That is the most important thing to dealing more damage. You think increasing your strength? No. You really, really need to upgrade your weapons. It makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, so I'm working with that, and I did upgrade my strength. I put a bunch of experience points in strength.
It's important. It's important too. I'm just saying.
But what is challenging me here right now is just when I get surprised, when I'm getting into a new area, and that's something I like. I like that I'm replaying levels. It's frustrating when I die to the same enemy, and I have to like go all the way back and get back up to them and kind of go through it. And I've gotten to some places where I'm just like, well, I know this enemy is here, so I can sneak around this way and stab them in the back, and then just keep going. And that feels kind of boss.
It's all about learning. It's learning. I know you feel so good. You're like, I know you're behind that wall, you punk.
Right, exactly. Fool me once.
Exactly.
So it's good. It's enjoyable. I love the aesthetics of the game, and I'll keep you posted.
It's good. It's great.
It's good.
Hey, you're not far enough.
It might.
To be able to
that's
say.
exactly it. It might get great. Right now, it's good.
All right. Your opinion's wrong, but that's okay. It's okay.
Did you? Well, I'm also approaching this from a different place, right? Because when you picked up this game for the first time, I can see why you would just be like, "This is incredible," whereas I'm just like, "Man, this is really good." And I'm sure I'm going to hit the point where I'm like, "This is incredible." I just haven't hit it yet.
You may not. Not everyone, even Souls fans, can get through Demon's Souls. It beats you down. It's a challenging game, which is why I suggest to go Royal, because really you need every advantage as possible. I'm not going to be ashamed to say, I said it in my article, I'll say it here, I cheesed some bosses in Demon's Souls. I definitely did some really cheap, disgusting tactics against some bosses. But guess what? I beat them. And that's the thing, is like, it's still satisfying to beat them that way, because you're like, I'm overcoming these obstacles by whatever means necessary. And I feel that fits into the aesthetic of the world, so.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I like that world aesthetic, and I like that kind of... It's very satisfying for me right now, because this is kind of dipping into our errata, but I was a really, really big Game of Thrones fan, and I am now pretty lukewarm on it. And so this is satisfying that need for like kind of gritty, dark fantasy. It's, as you would say, it's scratching that itch.
Scratching that itch, yeah. Great, man. So that's good. You been playing anything else? Taking time away from that? I also found out that of these 6 weeks I gave him, 2 of those he's on vacation, so you actually have 4 weeks to beat the game.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and beat it in those 4 weeks.
Yeah, I just need to tell him my hat size is what we're going. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, if it comes down to the wire, I'll just look up a guide and make it happen.
Yeah, okay. You can look up a guide now, and I think you'll still struggle.
Well, we'll see. I've got to try and devote more time to the game. It's going to be tough this weekend because I've got a festival that I'm going to be in. So I'm going to be building shrines and then carrying shrines around town all day.
My head can feel the new hat already.
Big words from a little man. Alex is taller than me, for the record.
Yes, I am.
He doesn't look like it because he has terrible posture.
What? I stand up straight.
Oh, hey, bird.
Oh, those insults that are not based on reality.
You can't prove that.
You can't prove that. I guess the folks are just seeing me as a Quasimodo right here, just walking around, half slumped over. Oh yeah, so mine, and I know you didn't ask, but in my experimental methods, I got 2 titles here. I'll talk about the first one a little bit. Hey. So I sat through this past weekend with Justine and played the 3rd episode of Tales from the Borderlands. This is the Telltale series, the episodic adventure that is set in the Borderlands universe. And so it's kind of a, you got my peanut butter and your chocolate. You got my chocolate and my peanut butter kind of things. Because I love Borderlands. I love the Borderlands universe. I love the Borderlands writing. I love the Borderlands gameplay. But I also love Telltale games recently. I love like the kind of choose your own adventure, the kind of shared story experience games. It's great. I won't go into any details because it's kind of the 3rd episode and spoilers, but I think this Tales from the Borderlands is quickly becoming one of my favorite of Telltale because a lot of the recent stuff has been very dark and heavy, which it works well. It's great. I think Walking Dead Season 1 is their best project they've done. But Tales from the Borderlands is kind of going again, kind of bucking that, and like in the style of Borderlands is like goofy and funny, and it's like dark comedy and violent. The characters are great, the dialogue is great. The choices are a little bit less compelling, but it's just so fun to go through there and play, and I'm laughing like the whole time with Justine, and it's just a blast. And it's just basically the Tales from the Borderlands is essentially a bizarre wild goose chase for one of these legendary vaults on Pandora. And you just have a crazy cast of characters. Everything's going on at every turn. You have a mix of basically corporate employees with these thieves and some assassins and vault hunters, and it's just a madhouse of fun and explosions and comedy. And I really would highly recommend it. I don't think you need... I mean, as a Borderlands fan, it's a great product. But as someone who's not even into the Borderlands universe, I think it's still a funny, silly game with great characters that's worth your time. So that's Tales from the Borderlands. I haven't reviewed any of these on the blog. I'm going to wait until all 5 episodes are released, which has unfortunately been taking forever. But yeah, I love Tales from the Borderlands. It's probably maybe my second favorite of the recent Telltale stuff, just behind Walking Dead. Though maybe it's third behind Wolf Among Us. God, that was good. So that was awesome. Whenever they put out an episode, I'm playing it the same week. It's great. But then I've also been playing Batman Arkham Knight. I'm about maybe 8-10 hours in now. I'm really enjoying it. I'll probably talk about it more next week, so I'll keep this very brief. It's fun. I love that you start as you feel like Batman. They don't do that thing where like, oh, you don't have any gadgets. Oh no, you can't do anything. It's like, no, you've got your grapnel boost. You've got your Batman. You got your boomerang. You've got your remote controlled. You've got your batarang. You got your remote controlled batarang. You got your explosive gel. You've got this. You've got that. You have a Batmobile right away. We can get into the Batmobile later. I've mixed feelings about the Batmobile.
I've heard a lot of mixed things about the Batmobile.
Yeah. Batmobile is a very divisive kind of subject. The story is very surprising and great, and the graphics are amazing. I'm telling you, I didn't know. I stared for like 2 minutes at rain dripping off of Batman's cowl, and it was awesome. So the combat is great as ever. It's more Batman. It's great. It's fun. The world's huge. I like a lot of what they're doing with how you discover and go about solving side quests. We can get onto that more later. But the one thing I wanted to mention, the one off-putting thing, aside from the kind of vehicle stuff, is the representation of women is kind of bad so far in the game. I'm only like 8 to 10 hours in, but essentially every female in the game has been a damsel at one point or another, including the kick-ass Catwoman.
What?
Yeah, I was just like, what? Like, if you played Arkham City, she's awesome.
She's all kinds of butt.
Yeah. It's not great. Even Poison Ivy was kind of a captive.
That is disgusting.
So, I know, right? I mean, the story is great and the characters are great, and I mean, despite being a captive, or being a damsel at some point or another, the female characters are still like, well written, I think, or their dialogue is good, but it's just kind of like really, Catwoman can't leave this place because of this thing, really.
All right, man. Well, it'll be good to hear how that continues as you get more into the game.
Yeah, but I'm really enjoying it. Play too much, making people mad.
By people, you mean your lovely lady friend?
It's true, but she loves watching it, so I played like 2.5 hours last night, which is probably a little bit too much for a weeknight.
She is a patient woman.
Yeah. Well, she got me The Witcher, so she's in for a lot with that. That's like a 100-hour game. Excited for that. Really excited for that. Justine's great. I love her. All right, so let's finish it up with a section we call Errata. This is movies, TV, life, everything else.
Yeah, man, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the San Diego Comic-Con. What's happening right now? And oh my gosh, I want to be there. I want to go to there. That is where I want to be right now. I want to be losing the Dark Souls bet the Demon Souls bet because I am at San Diego Comic-Con. That's what I want.
it's so big these days. Like, it feels like every single person in any kind of... I even hesitate to use nerd, because honestly, comic books aren't nerdy anymore.
I think there are
video games aren't
there
nerdy
are
anymore.
nerdy comic books. There are nerdy video games, but they are becoming more widespread media.
Like Manhattan Projects or something like that. Like some more obscure graphic novels. Certainly not Spider-Man or Superman or Star Wars or any of that stuff.
Which I'm going to plug here. Again, support independent comics.
Snot Girl looks great.
Snot Girl looks awesome. I'm so excited
for
about
Snot
that.
Girl. I loved Scott Pilgrim comics. I mean, I think Scott Pilgrim is totally unlikable. He's a narcissistic douchebag.
He reminds me of someone.
Hey, yeah, of you. Turn that around. Counterburn.
Well, if the shoe fits.
Yeah, but I mean, SDCC is huge. Some news is going to certainly come out of there. I'm so excited because tomorrow they're going to drop a trailer for Ash versus the Evil Dead, the new Showtime series. Oh my god, I'm so excited.
My body is ready.
I said on Twitter, and I stand by it, The Evil Dead is my favorite movie trilogy.
That is a great choice. That is a good choice for a favorite movie trilogy.
Yep. The only one that comes close is Nolan's Batman.
I like the original Star Wars trilogy. I know you don't like... We've been over this. We've been over this. You don't like Return of the Jedi. You're wrong. That's okay.
The original Star Wars trilogy isn't in contention for the same reason the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy is in contention, because the third movie is garbage.
That is not even beginning to be a fair comparison. That is a ridiculous comparison.
No,
that is ridiculous.
I said it, folks. I said it. Return of the Jedi is as good as Spider-Man 3.
Whoa, okay, folks, you cannot let this go unpunished. You've got to tell Alex.
No.
Join with me and telling him exactly how wrong he is, because usually when you talk about Return of the Jedi, you just say some normally kind of dumb stuff. You just said something that was just freaking bat crap crazy.
I'm going to go a little bit further. I actually think I enjoy Spider-Man 3 more than Return of the Jedi.
Were you drunk?
Nope. Sober. 100% sober.
I can't even look at you right now.
Yes.
That is disgusting. You can't go through this great podcast where you've said all this good stuff and then just completely invalidate all of your opinions like that.
The folks can't see it right now, but I'm dancing. This is my Return of the Jedi is garbage dance.
You guys should count your blessings, because this boy is not an ideal dancer.
Oh, man. But yeah, SDCC is huge. I'm so excited for the news coming out of it. I don't know if we're going to get any video game news, which kind of bums me out, because, I mean, that's my bag. I love video games.
And I'm not really thrilled with what Marvel and DC are doing with their comics universes right now, so...
Yeah, well, Marvel's not even going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, so... at least their movie division.
But, hopefully that'll give more space for... independent and
DC to trip over its own feet.
I was going to say for smaller publishers to get their work out there and independent publishers to get their work out there, but unfortunately you're probably right, since DC does working its foot and mouth disease.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, San Diego Comic-Con is almost too big for these small publishers and stuff. I feel bad for them, because I think it'd be awesome to actually go to a comic convention to see those developers and those creators, but now it's just it's a carnival of celebrities and nonsense.
Yeah, actually,
I mean, a cool carnival of celebrities and nonsense, but a carnival of celebrities and nonsense.
Yeah, actually, it's hilarious. You were just talking about how everyone is there. Well, Neil Gaiman had to tweet that he was not at SDC.
Exactly. Come on, you have to announce that you're not being there. Come on. Oh, though, speaking of, did you see the Conan O'Brien intro where they do Mad Max Fury Road goes to Comic-Con? They're dressed. Oh, it's so good.
It was amazing.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Oh, that movie continues to deliver solid content.
It's a gift that just keeps on giving.
It keeps on giving. And then one last piece of errata before we conclude here. This week I actually just recently listened to the WTF with Mark Maron podcast where President Obama was on, and I really think that's a must-listen for anybody who's interested in good discussion of any kind, but podcasts in general, or the presidency, or getting an insight into one of the most powerful figures in contemporary American society. I, like everyone else, I'm sure I have mixed sentiments on the president and what he's been able to accomplish in the presidency. Obviously, this past year and a half has been great for President Obama, but it's really interesting to see what feels mostly like he's much more candid than canned, I feel like, in this podcast. And I think it gives a very interesting look into, I think, one of the more interesting presidents in U.S. history. And one that, like, who other than President Obama would go on a podcast with a comedian to talk about his life. And I think it's really, it's only an hour. It's a must listen. I really, really suggest you go listen to that. It's great.
Yeah, man. Well, I have not gotten a chance to listen to that, so I will take up your recommendation, even though your opinion is questionable on all things. I will trust in you just for the sake of our long-standing friendship.
All right. Well, I think you could trust my word on that. So, not that I need to plug this guy's podcast. It's like the biggest podcast in the world, but that's WTF with Mark, M-A-R-C, Maron, M-A-R-O-N, with President Obama. But I'm sure if you just type in Obama on podcast, it'll probably show up. Well worth your hour. I think it's an hour well spent.
All right, well, awesome, dude. Thank you all for being here for episode 10 of the Impact Factor. We made it. 10 episodes, double digits. Very exciting stuff.
Woo, woo. The whistles go woo, woo.
Woo, woo, y'all, woo, woo. That happened. Anyway.
Unfortunately.
All right, well, thank you again for hanging out with us. You can find me at the C Fliss. That's at THECFLISS on Twitter. Also, check out my blog, Fliss of the North Star, for my thoughts on pop culture, Japan, and more. I'm on a Monday update schedule right now, and I published this week, my thoughts on the Avengers, kind of exploring in detail some of what I talked about on last week's podcast and making a very specific argument that the character of the Hulk was a typical and perhaps even exemplary version of the Mary Sue, which is author insertion and fantasy fulfillment through a work of media. And so I think I make a pretty good case for it. Let me know what you think. Give it a look. And let me know if I did do a good job in making that argument. That's flissofthenorthstar.blogspot.com. This week, I'll be writing about getting back to the gym. So if you have interest in fitness and stuff like that, I'll have a small article about that.
What? Oh, sorry. It's leaving through. It's the same thing.
You know why you're snoring? It's that beer belly. Because you need to go to the gym.
Right. So thank you, everyone, as always, for spending some time listening to the two of us, him and Haw, Jib Jab, Ponder. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can say that, to talk about random stuff as two scientists. We try to bring a perspective in wherever we could bear, but honestly, we're friends, I think, above else. We've been friends longer than we've been official scientists, so it's always good to have a chat with a friend. So if you're hearing this now, chances are you found it on our SoundCloud. That's soundcloud.com/TheImpactFactor. Please look us up on the iTunes store and subscribe to us there. You get direct downloads of each new episode each week, which is great. You have us in perpetuity. If you ever want to do an Impact Factor marathon, you can now listen to us for roughly 15 hours in a row. If you want to get yourself admitted to a mental hospital, that's a great way to do it. But rating us there and leaving a review on iTunes would really do a lot for us. Please, 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 if you listen to us, we'd really appreciate if you left a rating and wrote a review. So hopefully more people can listen to us. So for an archive of old episodes, as well as the Impact Factor Plays, a series of Let's Play videos, check us out on YouTube by searching the Impact Factor video games or checking the description for a link. The Impact Factor is an extension of my blog about video games, the impactfactor.blogspot.com. Check there every Tuesday for a new review or article. This week, as we mentioned in the podcast, I wrote about why we need handheld consoles for now, how I kind of, on my trip to Hawaii, handheld consoles really kind of brought about and fill a certain niche that I didn't even realize I had several months ago. And then every Friday for a curation of the best written pieces from around the world in gaming in a section I call News and Views. Send comments and suggestions to the podcast to impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Alex Samocha. That's Alex S-A-Mocha, like the coffee. And until next time, we unfortunately won't be at San Diego Comic-Con, but make an impact.